Before all the renowned individuals entered his life, a man who goes by the name, the Man of Hollywood, told everyone that he had fallen in love with someone else. In this video, Brad Pitt finally confesses to her that she was his true love at the age of 60. See why he hasn't spoken out yet by watching it through to the conclusion. There was another person whose name never appeared on the documents before Jennifer, Angelina, the marriages, and the international renown. She got to know him before Hollywood, the homes, and stylists attempted to define him. She was the only person who knew him as Brad before he became a trending topic. They met before he had a place of his own, before he shared meals and couches, before he was subjected to screen tests, before there were indicators, before people began to pay attention. There was no image or notoriety to protect. A guy and a girl were the only ones strolling through the city, and nobody had yet noticed them. Indeed, she wasn't a celebrity and didn't aspire to be. Perhaps that's why she grew closer to Brad than anybody else would ever be. She was aware of his ability to chuckle off stage. Not only did she know that about him, but she also understood his fears. She could see that he was doubting everything and was unsure. Everything changed when he received the call. The single component. The one event that completely upends a life. Just so you know, it wasn't a breakup. No fight broke out. No final conversation had place. It was just a change, space, and silence. He didn't give a call. She didn't hold off. She vanished like a cloud in the sky, and he was consumed by business. Everyone is aware of the artist's subsequent elopement, hero status, and rise to stardom. In public, he was spotted with 32 women. The stories regarding other celebrities weren't like these. These are all documented. Several of these connections were with directors, models, and co-stars. Indeed, it repeatedly occurred. It was referred to as a kind by some. It was described as a habit by some. However, they never seemed to last, regardless of what they were. He was dating whoever he wanted, and he had all the fame, influence, and power. He appeared to be genuinely content with Jen, Angie, Gwyneth, and Juliet at times. They were all real in their own way. Ultimately, though, they all left me wondering the same thing: why does he keep abandoning them? As soon as Pitt's name was recognized, people started to take an interest in him, and they never stopped. Women approached him through mutuals, premieres, and screenplays, photographers stood outside restaurants, and casting directors discussed him behind his back. Some celebrities wind up in romantic tales. Pitt appeared to have fallen for these ploys. When did it all start? Juliette Lewis was the first. The first was her. He was now an adult. She was younger. But for a while, at least, things worked out. They lived fast and acted out more. It was a meet-up, not love. He was insane, she said. She prevented him from injuring himself, he claimed. However, neither of them realized that the purpose of their relationship was to keep each other occupied, and they promptly ended it when that stopped working. And then there was Gwyneth. The shift was unexpected. He transitioned from wearing denim jackets to crisp suits, from gritty motels to upscale hotels. They looked fantastic. But in reality, he was getting smaller. He transformed into the person he believed she desired. His hair was cropped to resemble hers. He wore the same outfit as her. His words started to resemble hers. While some found it endearing, those closest to him claimed it was actually his attempt to find someone who would reciprocate his love. When they announced their impending engagement, everyone was taken aback. The news arrived swiftly. However, the news of their breakup spread even more quickly. They simply ended their relationship amicably. There was no scandal or infidelity. Gwyneth later referred to it as one of the greatest. Her life had some pretty depressing moments. Brad, however, remained silent. As usual, he simply continued on. Then it was Jennifer's time. She was Brad's normal and America's sweetheart. For the first time, he appeared to want to remain motionless. He may have done so. But the calm came with a weight he wasn't prepared for. He had to put all of his heart into her. They were married. The problem is that marriage didn't make him go away, on the contrary, it made him worse. No matter how much they grinned on the red carpet, things were about to change once more. It was worse than a commotion. It was indifference. Brad was searching elsewhere, but their lives appeared to be a fairy tale on social media. At that point, Angelina Jolie appeared. It's Mr. and Mrs. Smith, as everyone knows. What transpired behind the scenes, however, was far worse. Compared to Gwyneth, she was less insane. She was more honest than Jen could be. Furthermore, she was the very turmoil Brad had been attempting to conceal. He was unable to avoid their electrifying and explosive bond, which was not weak. The sexiest relationship was between these two. Brad remained silent as the news got out. When Jennifer broke down in tears on live television, he remained silent. For he had already made up his mind what to do. He was fleeing from a stillness that frightened him, not toward love. With Angelina, he also didn't have to slow down. They began dating, and their years together were both deadly and well-known. They had children. Their efforts to assist others were excellent. The speed and ease of their wedding surprised everyone. Then they were both died in a fire. Brad would subsequently claim that he lost recognizing himself and started drinking more. Additionally, he claimed that one night something will occur that would change everything. As a result of losing control, he lost charge. For the first time, he nearly lost everything, and he felt guilty about it. But he didn't stop. As he grew older, the women became increasingly numerous rather than disappearing. Models, actresses, and artists. Some were verified, while others weren't. They all worked together. All of them were children. All of them were temporary. The man was simply traveling so he wouldn't have to look back, not in search of a friend. 32 of this man's public partnerships were genuine, they weren't gossip or exaggerations. They all went out in the same manner, quietly and without a tail. However, nobody noticed this section. Between the failed dates and flings, Brad was engaged in another activity. He was trying to put something together and experience something he hadn't felt since the beginning of time. No matter how many homes he purchased, parts he performed, or people he kissed, it never returned. It was about the woman he never got back, not the women. It continued even though he didn't intend for it to. I didn't intend for everything to occur at once. It's simple for bad habits to take hold when you have all you need but nothing else. When the person he loved departed his life, something inside of him was permanently altered. It appeared to be a goal at first. He embraced the roles, the sequences, and the concept of repeatedly portraying different characters. Because he wasn't himself, people adored him. But beneath the rising stardom, something more sinister and unsaid was happening. He was being pursued because he didn't know how to stop it, not because he was wanting women. On a set, they first met. Over supper, the next one. One in a room where candidates are gathered. Every lady appeared to be different, whether she was quieter, younger, older, or more confident. But the endings were dreadfully familiar, the passion, the spark, the pictures, followed by the silent retreat, the withdrawal, and the silence. It wasn't pretty, yet it was referred to as a Hollywood romance. People were more interested in the image he created than in the man who hadn't phoned his true love back when they made an effort to approach him. Not the boy, who had yet to determine if she had waited. The fact that someone else once lived inside the star was unknown to them, yet they still liked him. He continued to choose ladies who didn't truly see him, the true him, for this reason. That's what protected them. If people didn't see the cracks, they wouldn't inquire about them. What if they didn't inquire? If he wasn't acting, he wouldn't have to tell them the truth, that he didn't know how to love someone. He was not heartless. He tried his hardest. Some stayed with him even when he shoved them, kissed him like they meant to, and laughed too loudly. But he missed her more the closer they got. You believe the figure in the fog to be real, but it disappears each time you approach it. He never mentioned it to anyone, but he was caught in a cycle of substitutes, attempting to achieve the same feeling from many women that only one woman had ever given him. Then no. The split from Angelina Jolie, however, was among the most painful heartbreaks he had ever experienced. Brad had centered his life on achievement, but nothing had prepared him for the public discussion of his personal shortcomings. After years of being the most sought-after man in Hollywood, he slipped from prominence without a failing film or forgettable role. September 14, 2016 was the day it fell from the sky. From France to Los Angeles, one person traveled alone. On board were Brad Pitt, Angelina Jolie, their 6 children, and the burden of years that had finally fallen apart. The information was not immediately released to the public. After a period of silence, someone abruptly announced that Angelina had filed for divorce. There was not much time. Just 5 days after the jet landed, the paperwork was submitted. She claimed that they could no longer get along and requested full custody of the kids. The timing was prearranged. It wasn't a coincidence. Soon, the news filled in the blanks. Pitt and Maddox, their eldest son, got into a fight, an internal FBI probe, and an anonymous report to child protection authorities. They were never charged with anything. The FBI closed the case, but the damage was already done. The public makes its own decisions rather than waiting for them. Brad Pitt later denied that nothing occurred in the months that followed. He actually talked more than most people anticipated. He acknowledged that he had been drinking for years as a coping mechanism for his anguish, guilt, and silence. He admitted to GQ that he was drinking daily, that he was skilled at avoiding social interaction, and that he no longer wanted to live that way. The events aboard that plane marked the beginning of a conflict as well as the dissolution of a marriage. For the first time, Brad Pitt wasn't the protagonist. He was neither the cool rebel nor the misunderstood artist. He was a father who was unable to visit his children due to regulations and the opinions of others. Obtaining custody was a drawn-out, humiliating procedure that involved more than simply a court case. He had once merely assisted with visits. He was not allowed to sleep with his children. More was revealed in the court documents than was ever made public. Jolie said that he had previously physically mistreated the kids. According to her attorneys, Pitt choked one of the children and struck another in the face. Pitt's squad denied the allegations. Conflicting testimonies and closed files still concealed the truth, but the harm was already done. His former partner, Jolie, had turned on him. Their common goal of creating an international family was dashed amid allegations and a blame game. The lawsuit had not been resolved even after several years. Pitt briefly prevailed in 2021 when a judge granted him partial custody, but it was swiftly overturned when Jolie's attorney succeeded in having the judge dismissed for failing to disclose that he had previously collaborated with Pitt's legal team. Since then, the custody dispute has continued for a considerable amount of time, primarily behind closed doors, and it doesn't appear to be coming to a conclusion. As of 2025, Pitt does not have sole custody of any of the children. It's more difficult to quantify the psychological toll. In interviews, Pitt has attempted to avoid direct conflict. He doesn't use Jolie's name very much, but when he thinks about being a father, his confidence wanes and his doubts increase. "You have to understand that when you're trying to piece your life back together, your kids see it," he once stated. He was aware that they were observing both the real-life man and the TV actor. For a time, they could no longer look up to him. He continued to work professionally. For Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, he received his first starring Oscar in 2019, but some people didn't think it was worth it. His public appearances were quieter and more alone at the time, and he was not spotted strolling the red carpet with his children. His remarks seemed genuine, yet those who failed to appear stood out more than those who did. The incident altered people's perceptions of him in addition to how he was cast in films. He was no longer the golden boy. He had many facets. He had everything and lost the things that mattered. The audience never forgot, even though the press eventually had second thoughts. The children didn't do it either. Pax in particular has avoided it. He allegedly attacked Pitt and labeled him a terrible guy in an Instagram story published in 2020. Experts did not refute the separation, but they also did not confirm the post. Pitt went to therapy outside of work. He became a member of an alcoholics organization. It was about accepting responsibility without giving up an embarrassment and confronting his mental limitations. He was able to carve forms out of metal and stone in his art area on long hours by himself. Someone who had always been watched was now attempting to identify his shape in the shadows. It was a loss, not a fresh start. However, one aspect of the story never resurfaced as he recovered. The woman from earlier, the one who knew him before things became too burdensome. Her name escaped his lips. He made no effort to attain tranquility. Perhaps she didn't want to give it to him, or perhaps the last thing he could handle after all the farewells he had missed was losing custody of his children. Now that he is nearly 61 years old, Brad Pitt appears more composed. He talks about farming, but even as he ages, he has told everyone everything. We'll tell you everything in detail now. In 2025, Brad Pitt will be about 62 years old. A man who played a significant role in Hollywood's heyday is no longer in the spotlight. He only attends red carpet events for the films he directed and spends more time in his Los Feliz compound. He avoids interviews unless they are his idea, departs early, and drinks sparkling water at events. However, a closer examination reveals that the shift was brought on by loss rather than aging. Neither the paparazzi nor the producers had anything to do with how that story ended. It began before he was a person. Prior to the plane, the courts, Jennifer, and Angelina. He was deeply in love with her. Although we don't know her name, we do know that she is not an actress or model and that she is the daughter of a Methodist pastor. He was aware that she would confront him directly if he was overly optimistic. He was new, and his name was John. He dropped everything to head west with $325 and a beat-up Datsun after graduating from the University of Missouri as a journalism student. She was the first to take him seriously, not because of his appearance but rather because of the way he discussed movies. They never appeared together in a photo. It consists only of anecdotes from former acquaintances, local radio broadcasters, and a 2007 Parade interview in which he spoke adoringly about her. There are no tabloids, no blurry film, no red carpet photos. He went so far as to claim that she wasn't that into me, and that she would let him know when he was harboring too much romantic interest in her. They spent just 18 months together, alternating between Springfield and Los Angeles. However, the calm conclusion brought everything to a close. He didn't take her west. In Missouri, she worked in community theater for a while before deciding to work for a worthy cause. After being married, she had children. She never assumed his name or spoke to the media. However, many who knew Brad in the early 1990s said that she was the female his buddies teased as he gained popularity and that he never really explained. Not because it was bad, but because it was too crucial to keep hidden. They were aloof as soon as they gained notoriety. However, her presence suggested that he was still reachable. Although it was still easy to remember, her name lost significance as the years passed. Gwyneth Paltrow, Juliette Lewis, Thandau Newton, Jennifer Aniston, and Angelina Jolie were among the people Pitt hung out with. None of them were genuine, but the list became longer. The only person who didn't like who he became was Cynthia. She found what he aspired to be appealing. She was discovered at a Missouri local show in 2017. The only thing she said when she declined the interview was, that was the whole point. It was never meant to be public. He was just Brad. It was just Brad. In the same year, Pitt entered a rehab facility and began creating sculptures. According to friends, he began reading old emails in his early journals, and one of them contained a page he wrote to her but never sent. It is said that he may have considered reaching out to her again, but it was too late. Rumor has it that she passed away in 2015, and no one heard about it in the news. Pitt likely didn't know about the service because he didn't go, and he didn't learn about it until 2018 from a college friend they had lost contact. People who know him well say he didn't speak for a day and that he took a long drive alone through Ojai and didn't return until after midnight. But that year, he sold several houses, reorganized his production company, stopped searching for roles, and started making films like Blonde, Minari, and She Said that didn't center on him. When asked about it in an interview, he simply replied, "I want to be useful, not just visible." Pitt briefly dated Ines de Ramon in 2022, and by 2023, there were rumors circulating about Emily Ratajkowski. By 2024, it was all over, with a Vanity Fair article titled "Why No One Stays with Brad" going viral. The answer, however, lay not in his pride or good looks, but in his sadness. He loved someone so deeply in the past that he nearly ran out of love to give to others. Maddox and Pax avoid each other. Zahara attends school in Spelman. Shiloh legally dropped the Pitt from her last name in 2024, when she became an adult. Kendall and Knox, the youngest, are still with Jolie. Brad occasionally sees them, but the family he once built is long gone. He now spends hours welding statues, some of which are 10 feet tall. Most are unseen, he said. They're what's left, the shapes of everything I didn't say when I should have. Brad Pitt's life was televised for decades, but the true storyline was about time, not about movies or even marriage. He was loved deeply before he knew how to accept it, and it was gone by the time he learned about it. The woman never wrote a book about her life, demanded money, or made a mess of things from the beginning. But in her absence, the voids between the subsequent events were filled with a deafening quiet. Brad Pitt didn't have love, perfection, or forgiveness.